Hello guys, Croft is here. This video is a comprehensive compilation of the Engineer and Prometheus lore, including various theories, explanations, and analyses that I've discussed over the years on this channel. We'll explore a variety of topics, including the translation of the deleted Engineer dialogue, the reasons behind the Engineer's hate for humans, and what led to their demise on LV-223. Additionally, I'll explain who created the Engineers, Dr. Shaw's discovery of their artifacts on Earth, and several other minor topics. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy the content and join the Patreon for extra support. And without further ado, let's dive into the lore. Hello guys, Croft is here. When I saw Prometheus, I was quite surprised that one of the engineers, creators of life on Earth, was so aggressive to the human crew and proceeded to launch a ship that would destroy humanity. Many people probably expected species of this advanced civilization to act more peacefully, but this is not what happens. In this video, I'm gonna talk about why engineers hate humans and want to kill them, and this is not because they got jealous of human hair. Although the movie does not explicitly answer this question, Ridley Scott actually explains the engineer motives in a podcast with the Empire magazine.
Whoa!
Before we get to the Scott's explanation, I will briefly mention some other good theories that also sound plausible and can be even more logical than the director's answer. One theory suggests that there are two fractions of engineers, creators who seeded life on Earth and destroyers who think that any other life form other than engineers is unethical and shouldn't exist. That would explain why the ship used by creators at the beginning of Prometheus is different from juggernauts used by destroyers. It would also explain the difference in suits, since creators don't have these bias suits that seemingly merge with the body. So just like humans, engineers probably have different nations and groups with distinct goals. Another theory is that engineers seed planets with life to experiment and develop bioweapons. Once a civilization achieves a certain level of technological advancement, they would drop their bioweapons, the black goo in this case, to test how effective it is. We know that engineers not only seeded Earth with life, but people on Planet 4 were also their creations as well. So engineers could experiment with humanoid life forms to see which ones would develop faster. A different theory suggests that the engineer started to kill people as soon as he touched David. Maybe the engineer realized that David is not a biological creation and considered this quote-unquote life form disgusting. So he killed David first and proceeded to the human crew. Or maybe engineers thought that they are the only ones who are entitled to create, just like humans who programmed later versions of androids such as Walter, forbidding them to be creators. These were pretty good theories, but now let's talk about the Ridley Scott explanation, which I think is really good and ties with the dialogue scene when the engineer wakes up. Peter Weyland tries to talk to the engineer, but Shaw interrupts him, so he orders his men to hit her and shoot her if she tries to speak again. Although it is presented as the engineer does not understand English, I think he realized that humans are violent and dangerous species, so that for some reason Weyland is allowed to talk to him, but not Elizabeth. As Ridley said, he sees engineers as gardeners of space that would occasionally visit an empty bowl and in their godlike generosity create life. But they periodically visit planets they've seeded, and if they discover that their offsprings have lost their way and prove to be disappointment, they would wipe the planet clean.
If the planet went wrong, they would want to wipe it clean.
Pretty much like God, who caused the Great Flood because the earth was filled with violence, corruption, and inequality. This is very similar to what was happening on Earth around 0 BC when the engineers originally planned to destroy humans. As we know from Prometheus, the engineer ship was about 2000 years old, so after observing that humanity have not developed the way they wanted, Ridley states that engineers decided to send their missionary, Jesus Christ, as the last attempt to guide humans onto the right path. But we ended up crucifying Jesus, so the engineers made a final decision that life on Earth was a mistake and prepared to launch their ship. This is also confirmed by what David does to people on the planet 4. He learned of the engineer ways and then dropped the black goo bombs to destroy a humanoid race. The engineer in Prometheus wakes up and sees that people they wanted to destroy 2000 years ago arrived to the distant planet. He realizes that humans are still violent and corrupt species who are also capable of interstellar travel, which makes them even more dangerous to other engineer creations. So it's not a surprise that the engineer kills the human crew and proceeds to destroy Earth. According to Ridley, the engineer plan to destroy humanity is still relevant today based on what is happening in the world right now, including the pollution of environment, poverty, and inequality in poor countries.
What's happening in Syria right now is medieval.
Yeah.
And no, it's worse than medieval.
Hey guys, Croftus here. In this video I wanna talk about why engineers gave humans a map to LV-223, which Dr. Shaw perceived as an invitation. When I first saw Prometheus, it seemed a little bit confusing because we learned that LV-223 was a military facility with bioweapons that were meant to destroy humans, but for some reason engineers left a map to that place. As Dr. Shaw explained, this map to the star system with the moon LV-223 was found in many different places on Earth that were separated not only by distance but also by time. In other words, ancient humans in different locations and eras depicted the same star system. That means engineers intentionally wanted people to know the location of their military base for some unexplained reason. There are a few possible answers, some of which are given in Alien Covenant, surprisingly. The other ones are related to Prometheus. The Prometheus crew interpreted many things in a wrong way, including the pictogram with giant beings pointing to 6 stars. According to one theory, it was not an invitation at all as Dr. Shaw assumed, but a warning reminding humans to behave better, and in the case they don't, engineers would unleash xenomorphs and destroy humanity on Earth. Considering Christian imagery in Prometheus and Covenant, the symbolism might also tie into Armageddon, which is the supposed location of gathering of armies for a battle during the end of times. The bioweapons xenomorphs represent demons, plagues, and hell. In addition, Armageddon translates from Greek as a mountain or a range of hills, which is kinda what we find on LV-223, a mountain-like temples built in a line. As I said before, there are 6 stars on the pictogram. The number 6 appears multiple times during the film on the screens of the crew. This could be another biblical reference to the number 666, which is considered the number of the beast associated with the devil. Certainly, if the engineers are godlike creators of humanity, then xenomorphs have a clear resemblance to demons. The consistency of the religious themes points to both the creation mythology and the Armageddon or the end of times, which means that it's more likely that the cave paintings and other ancient Earth artworks were all depicting visits from engineers threatening us with Armageddon, which would manifest as the release of bioweapon aliens on Earth. Another suggestion is that the map was given to humans to destroy them in case they reach the level of technological advancement that would allow them traveling through space to LV-223. The myth of Prometheus is about a man who is punished for trying to gain knowledge and power equal to gods. In the same way, if humans would reach the level of technology that is similar to engineers, they would be punished by the pathogen for trying to imitate gods. This also ties with the fact that in the deleted scene, Wayland proclaimed himself a god a few seconds before the engineers started killing the crew. There is also a theory that LV-223 is a place for the final judgment of humans, which relates to the piano piece in Alien Covenant Entrance of Gods into Valhalla. Valhalla is an afterlife in the Norse mythology which only the Chosen may enter. The Chosen were selected by Odin himself for the glorious accomplishments in battles. And in Viking culture, most warriors perceived death in battle above everything else, so they could enter Valhalla and live alongside great heroes and gods themselves. Again, the star system containing LV-223 is not an invitation to paradise, it is an invitation to humanity to go to a place where it would be decided whether or not they are worthy to enter the paradise. The engineers on LV-223 were probably stationed there to monitor humanity from afar and wait their arrival so the judgment could be made on whether or not allowing them entry to the engineer homeworld. Those engineers, however, seemed to take it upon themselves to destroy humanity before they could arrive, and if we look at the extended scene in which Peter Wayland speaks to the last engineer, he does not initially attack the humans. First, the engineer studies them. His decision to attack is based on the hostility of Elizabeth towards him, the hostility of the humans towards Shaw, as well as the physical force used to silence her. And finally, Wayland proclaims himself to be God and desires immortality. The last engineer in this moment realizes that humans must be wiped out, primarily because they're still a savage and violent race. What is also interesting is another deleted scene in the lifeboat where the engineer initially discovers Shaw hiding. He does not attack her, he studies her, and it's only after she strikes him with an axe, then he attacks her back. We may not know the exact intentions the engineers had, but it seems to me that LV-223 was designed to be a testing ground for species seeded by engineers, and where it would be decided whether the creatures could be allowed to go to the engineer homeworld. So when the Prometheus arrived, the last engineer conducted his study of humans, and he was shocked by their savagery, desire to be worshipped as gods, desire for immortality, and the fact that they created David, an android, artificial life. I think Ridley had all these thoughts related to Christianity and being worthy of engineer knowledge while making Prometheus. What do you guys think about these theories? Which one do you like the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Hello guys, Croft is here. In today's video I'll be covering the full translation of the engineer dialogue scene that was cut from Prometheus in the editing process. In the theatrical version, the engineer doesn't say a word after awakening, however, the Blu-ray edition contains an entire 2-minute conversation between the engineer, David, and Wayland. On top of that, one of the early draft scripts has a 5-page dialogue with the awakened engineer, which is fully translated in English and reveals many plot points that explain some of the mysteries of the movie. So first, I'm gonna go through the Blu-ray deleted scene providing a translation of what the engineer and David said to each other. The linguist that was responsible for the engineer language actually gave an interview explaining what different lines meant. Then I'll cover the extended dialogue from the early draft script, which was eventually rewritten, and the conversation with the engineer was extensively reduced, probably because it revealed many themes of the movie in a really explicit way. This early draft script has much more information about the engineer lore and history, and I made a few videos about it, so you should definitely watch them if you haven't already. Lastly, I'll cover another early script with a different translation that actually explains why the engineer attacked David so violently. So let's start with the Blu-ray deleted scene. Right after the breathing tubes detach from the engineer, Wayland says, "Speak to him, David, tell him we came just like he asked," which directly refers to the multiple maps they found around the world that were perceived as an invitation. Then David addresses the engineer in the Proto-Indo-European language that he learned on his way to LV-223. There is actually a short scene in the beginning of the movie of him practicing this language while eating, and the guy on the screen is the real-life linguist Dr. Anil Bilto. He was a language consultant who composed all the lines in Proto-Indo-European for Prometheus, and in an interview he explained what David said to the engineer. So in the deleted scene, when the engineer speaks, David translates it back to Wayland saying, "He asks you why you're here." Then Wayland tells David to tell the engineer the reason he wanted to meet him. According to the linguist, what David said can be directly translated as, "This man is here because he doesn't want to die, he believes you can give him more life." Asking the creator for more life heavily refers to another Ridley Scott movie, Blade Runner, specifically to the scene in which a replicant Roy asks Tyrell to extend his life. The engineer responds and David translates it back to Wayland. "I told him you wanted to live forever." He asks why. Then we can see the excitement in Wayland's eyes as he explains why he deserves to live forever. "You see this man," pointing to David, "my company built him from nothing. I made him in my own image, so he would be perfect, so he would never fail. I deserve this because you and I, we are superior, we are creators, we are gods, and the gods never die." Then the events unfold in the same way as in the movie, and according to one theory, the desire to live forever is the ultimate sin that made engineers try to send the deadly virus to Earth. Just like birth of a xenomorph requires sacrifice of a host, the engineer at the beginning of Prometheus sacrifices himself to give birth to humanity. However, Wayland's desire to live forever totally contradicts to this sacrifice-birth cycle, which seems to be at the core of the engineer's religion that has the deacon as its deity. Wayland's attempt to escape death signified to the engineers that humanity no longer follows the core principle of their beliefs, which is the sacrifice-birth cycle, and therefore humanity is no longer worthy of existence. That's one possible interpretation of the engineer's intentions. In fact, this Blu-ray deleted scene only had a few extra lines of dialogue that gave us a general sense of what the engineer was saying. On the other hand, the early Prometheus draft script has a much longer version of this conversation, and that's where things get really interesting and we learn so much more about why engineers prepared this deadly virus for humans. This draft script has a 5-page conversation with the engineer, which was eventually reduced to just a few lines. So this passage reveals the original uncut dialogue that was sort of a foundation of many underlying themes of the movie. After they awaken the engineer, Wayland tells David, "Speak to him, David, tell him that we came just like he asked," which is also what we see in the movie. But then the lines that David says in the engineer language are written in English in the script. "We come from the place far away that you and your kind were heading to. We found murals of your kind giving us directions and an invitation to come here to your homeworld. We are your creation." After hearing this, the engineer stands up, struggling to keep his balance. He responds in a nasty and insidious voice. "This is not my homeworld. My homeworld is paradise. I did not ask your kind to come here. Why is your presence disturbing my atmosphere?" What did he say, David? He asked to know why you're here. As you can see, David doesn't translate everything that the engineer says. Particularly, he doesn't tell Wayland that the engineer is not pleased by their arrival. It almost seems like David has a malicious intent, and by translating selected parts of the engineer's speech, he gives Wayland a false sense of security and hides engineer's true intentions. David cannot lie, but by not telling Wayland the full translation, he does lie indirectly, which is another subtle way of showing David's sinister motives. Wayland: tell him I came for answers. Ask him why they created us, what is our purpose, and where did we come from. Ask him, David, ask him. David: we want to know why you created life on our planet, why did you create us, and what was our purpose. The engineer is breathing heavily. Even though these beings can live for hundreds of thousands of years, speaking can take away centuries of their lives. Just one sentence can drain them of energy. This can be noticed by the engineer's body and facial language. Then the engineer explains why they created life on Earth. Many worlds have been crafted by the hand of our fathers through the blood of our Lord. Yours was the only one that was successful. The star child of the universe, yours is the only star child that is like our homeworld. Wayland: what is he saying? They made our planet perfect like theirs. Then, just like in the movie, the script describes a really important scene involving Shaw, which reveals Wayland's true nature. Shaw: David, ask him where they're from. David translates Shaw's message to the engineer, who never once takes his eyes off Shaw. Wayland: what are you doing? Shaw: ask him what's in his cargo, it killed his people. Wayland: Shaw, that's enough, for God's sake shut her up, which is followed by Jackson hitting Shaw in the stomach. Shaw cries out and falls to her knees. The engineer is suddenly angered by the sight of violence. Shaw: you made it here and it was meant for us. Why? I need to know why. What did we do wrong? Why do you hate us? As David translates everything Shaw says, the engineer stands up and looks down upon Shaw. David finally finishes translating everything Shaw said. Wayland hits David to stop him. The engineer, angered by the hostility and tension surrounding him, explodes in a dramatic, almost Shakespearean display response to Shaw. Because of the complexity of its language, the reply takes nearly 3 minutes to complete, and the engineer looks violently exhausted during and after the speech. Hate? We gave you this emotion. We gave you all emotion we had expected not of your evolution. We took care of you, gave you fire, built your structures. We gave you Eden, you worshipped us. We praised our creation from above. We watched you time and time again kill each other, start wars. We came back and saved your souls, but we left you to make your own fate. But your kind is a barbaric, violent species. We tried once more to save you. We took a mother's child back to paradise and educated him. We taught him the meaning of life and creation. We put him back into Eden to educate your kind, but your kind decided to punish him. We gave you the fruits of life, and you repay us by leaving it to rot. You talk to me of hate, prepare for rapture. David: sir, he said. Wayland: I don't care, now continue, tell him why I came, and only translate whatever I say and no one else. David: this man is here because he doesn't want to die, he believes you can give him eternal life. Then the engineer responds: your kind is not worthy of this. What makes you think I shall give you this prize? Tell me, why? David translates it back to Wayland. I told him you wanted to live forever. He asked why. Wayland approaches the engineer and gives the exact same speech we hear in the deleted scene, basically saying that he created David, which makes him superior and equal to engineers, therefore equal to gods who should live forever. Then the events unfold in the same way as in the movie. The engineer looks at David, examines him with curiosity and admiration, but then he rips off his head and proceeds to kill the crew. As the engineer explicitly said in the script, he refused giving Wayland eternal life because, according to him, humanity was unworthy of that. In fact, Wayland seems to be the embodiment of humanity's sins, and the engineer sort of rejects the entire human race by attacking Wayland. Another possible interpretation of the engineer's speech might be that by saying, "We gave you Eden," he means Earth in its natural condition, perfectly made for humans to live in. At first, people lived in harmony with nature and themselves, worshipping their gods and accepting the natural cycle of life and death. But as humans developed more advanced skills and technologies, they started becoming greedy, caused violence and wars. Consequently, humans wanted to become just like gods in their ability to create life themselves and escape death, which is exemplified by Wayland, who traveled light years away from Earth to ask engineers for more life, while being accompanied by an artificial human, David, that he created. Another really interesting part is when the engineer said, "We tried once more to save you. We took a mother's child back to paradise and educated him, taught him the meaning of life and creation. We put him back into Eden to educate your kind, but your kind decided to punish him." In these lines, the engineer refers to Jesus, implying that he was taken to the engineer homeworld to learn about proper principles of living, so that later he could return and bring the humanity on the right path. However, the engineer also says, "But your kind decided to punish him," which refers to the Jesus crucifixion that happened about 2000 years ago, at the same time when the engineers almost sent the deadly virus to Earth. So according to the script, after the last and failed attempt to get the humanity on the right path with Jesus, engineers deemed humans a violent species and almost launched the deadly pathogen to end their creation. Lastly, let's take a look at another early script in which the scene of the engineer awakening is totally different, and I'll probably make a separate video about that script since it has many elements that are totally different from the movie. Contrary to the previous script, the dialogue between David and the engineer wasn't translated. However, in later scenes, David told Shaw what he said to the engineer. In that script, Shaw was named Watts, and a few moments before David died, he told Elizabeth the following: "David, I spoke to him. Watts, I know." An electric spasm convulses his face. "David, he said I killed him. He'll die, but first he'll launch the ship." So according to David, the awakening of the engineer would cause his death, which is why he specifically attacked David, who brought him out of hypersleep. Later in that script, the engineer launches the Juggernaut to Earth. However, as he's taking off, an alien erupts from his chest and through the pilot chair suit, which ultimately kills him. It looks like the engineer was infected with the pathogen or was impregnated with the alien embryo, just like all the other ones found in the temple. He decided to go to hypersleep so that the embryo wouldn't grow, and he was hoping that other engineers would wake him up and remove an alien from his chest. This sequence of events in which an alien erupts from the pilot leading to the ship crash perfectly connects to the original Alien of 1979, where the crew finds a fossilized space jockey with the hole in his chest inside of a crashed Juggernaut. Based on the information in that script, it is also possible that the deacon that came out of the engineer at the end of Prometheus was growing inside of him even before the awakening. Since in the movie the engineer attacks David just like in the script, maybe the engineer had an embryo inside of him too, and the trilobite simply killed him without impregnating. What do you guys think about these translations of the engineer dialogue, and do you think they should have included them in some way in the movie? Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video gave you some new insights about Prometheus that you didn't know before.
Hey guys, Croftus here. Today I want to talk about what happened to LV-223 after Prometheus. There are actually a number of interesting things that we did not have a chance to see in the movie, including more Deacon scenes and some fascinating events involving engineers and xenomorphs. As many of you probably know, LV-223 is named this way for a reason and is actually a reference to a quote from the Bible, Leviticus 2:23, which in modern translation says, "If any one of your descendants touches these things, that person will become unclean. That person must be separated from me. The Israelites gave these things to me. I am the Lord." Being unclean and touching these things is probably a reference to touching the black goo, which exactly what David does, and becomes a devil figure later in the story, while other crew members undergo severe mutations. In other words, they lose their human characteristics and in this way become separated from God. That was just a biblical reference, and there are tons of ways of interpreting it, but now let's get to what actually happened to LV-223. Originally, it was planned that David and Shaw would be pursued by a newborn Deacon alien as they run towards the second Juggernaut on LV-223. Collector's Blu-ray edition has many images of that sequence, and they provide several details about the Deacon's pursuit. The alien runs across desert landscapes as it hunts Shaw and nearly misses the Juggernaut. This would actually imply that Shaw pretty quickly assembled David back together since she doesn't know how to control Juggernauts. Otherwise, David had to explain to her how to set up the navigation system so they can leave before the Deacon reaches them. The imagery of the Deacon pursuit is really cool, and too bad that it was never filmed, as we would learn more about the Deacon, a distant relative of xenomorph species. It would also give a legitimate reason why the Deacon teaser was included at the end of Prometheus. Comic books Fire and Stone explain what happened to the Deacon and LV-223 after the expedition, which is actually extremely interesting, so let's go over it. A year after Prometheus, a probe is sent to the moon and it starts to scan the landscape, but an engineer crashes it on its way. This actually indicates that there is at least one more engineer left alive. In the years that followed the Prometheus expedition, LV-223 changed dramatically from rocks and stones to massive organic jungles. The ampules aboard the engineer's ship containing the black goo spread across LV-223, accelerating the development of the world's ecosystem, introducing acceleration of organic life and breathable atmosphere, which later led to appearance of different alien species. 86 years after the Prometheus expedition, a cargo ship, Onager, made an emergency landing on LV-223 due to a xenomorph attack on the board. A crew thought that they killed all the xenomorphs, but it was not the case, so shortly after the landing, remained xenomorphs killed the crew and escaped into the jungle. 40 years after this, a second human vessel, the Gerion, arrived at LV-223 as a part of a documentary film expedition with the captain Angela Foster to discover the fate of Peter Weyland and the Prometheus. A human crew soon discovered different creatures and the xenomorphs in the jungle. It also happened that they arrived at the moon in the middle of a huge conflict between xenomorphs, engineers, and predators. The remaining engineers were awakened from stasis and began attacking the crew with the intent on continuing their mission to wipe out humanity. At one point, 2 crew members were surrounded by a bunch of xenomorphs, and an unexpected engineer killed the aliens and saved these people. When humans showed their gratitude to the engineer, he destroyed them using the same weapon. It appears that engineers view all other species as a threat, similarly to xenomorphs who are extremely violent and aggressive while protecting their territory. Eventually, one of the 2 engineers was killed and only 4 humans remained alongside a predator, Ahab, who formed a temporary alliance with them. The survivors tried to go across a lake, but some of them fell into the water with mutated sharks down below. The crew also encountered the same Deacon that we saw in Prometheus. After more than 100 years, the Deacon transformed into a mountain. I know it sounds a little bit crazy, but this is actually what happened. Apparently, the deacon was consuming the black goo from the temples because there was no any other food at the time when Shaw left LV-223. Eating such large amounts of the black goo resulted in severe mutations so that the deacon grew to the size of a mountain. This is actually a pretty interesting idea, and it shows one of the effects that the black goo might have. Well, that's all we know about what happened on LV-223 in the years following the Prometheus expedition. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit a like, subscribe, and see you next time.
Hello guys, Croft is here. I recently found a notebook written by Dr. Elizabeth Shaw outlining different engineer artifacts that she found on Earth. Prior to the Prometheus expedition, Shaw discovered many artifacts that provided some insights about engineers and their visits on Earth in prehistoric era. We have 8 pages from her notebook in total with pictures and comments. These documents are segments of Dr. Elizabeth Shaw's research file and have been taken from an undisclosed source in order to ensure the success of the project Prometheus. All content is considered classified until the mission is complete. Before we begin, I just want to mention that Ridley Scott shared in an interview that he actually believes that some kind of extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in prehistorical times. In fact, this whole idea is called ancient astronauts theory and was proposed at the beginning of 20th century. Ancient astronauts, also called as ancient aliens, refers to the idea that intelligent extraterrestrial beings visited Earth and made contact with humans in antiquity and prehistorical times. People who believe in this theory suggest that this contact influenced the development of modern cultures, technologies, and religions. A common claim is that deities from most, if not all, religions are extraterrestrial in origin, and that advanced technologies brought to Earth by ancient astronauts were interpreted as evidence of divine status by early humans. This theory obviously inspired a sort of ancient design of Juggernaut in the original Alien and the engineers that we saw in Prometheus. I mentioned the ancient aliens theory because I'll be referring to it as we go through Shaw's diary. This urn is similar to the one with the black goo that we've seen on LV-223, and Shaw discovered the same one on Earth. The urn does not respond to carbon dating, so Shaw estimates that it's about 4,500 years old. Geometric forms on the urn were only detected with laser disruption, and they appear to be more advanced than the traditional Akkadian script. But the geometric figures are similar to the ones that were found in France, so Shaw mentions that these geometric markings is a fairly standard way of detecting the presence of engineers. Does the presence of this urn on Earth mean that the xenomorphs or some sort of aliens have been already created on Earth a long time ago? Or the engineers have already wiped out the life on Earth multiple times in the past using the black goo? This is a sketch of a relief found in Egypt. The Temple of Horns contained several hieroglyphs that seem to reference the engineers. Shaw remarks that this figure is not recognizable as any of the Egyptian gods or pharaohs, and it's about twice taller than ordinary people, same as god figures of this period. It's possible that engineers were visiting Egypt, and that's why all Egyptian gods are as tall as the engineers. What's also interesting is that the big heads that we saw in Prometheus and Covenant are very similar to the heads on the Easter Island that are considered to be a mystery. The island itself is one of the most remote places on Earth and is located about 1,000 miles from the closest inhabited land. It has 887 head monuments that weigh about 85 tons each. So what kind of civilization would build this, and most importantly, why? Ridley was definitely inspired by this to include giant head monuments in his movies. This pictograph dates approximately 3000 BC and belongs to the early Bronze Age. This clearly resembles the space jockey that we saw in Prometheus and the original Alien. This sketch is a picture of a hologram that was used for navigation, the same one that we've seen in Prometheus. Maybe leaders or high priests of ancient civilization were allowed to go inside juggernauts, and later they depicted what they saw in manuscripts. This relief from Peru shows a map to Zeta Reticuli system. That's a pretty weird name, but it's a binary star system that is 39 light years from Earth, and it's unclear how people at that time would get this map. Certainly it was handed to them by engineers, so for some reason they wanted humans to know where Engineer settlement is located. This one is really interesting. Dr. Shaw writes that the sketch was found in Indonesia, but the date is unknown. Elizabeth also comments, hands reaching for what appears to be a ship. Did early humans know the truth about our origin, about our gods? This again goes back to the ancient aliens theory. This pictograph was found in Chaco Canyon, and as Elizabeth writes, it was hidden under centuries of dust. That weird markings on the body could actually be the engineer's suit that we saw in Prometheus. Here is another Shaw's note. Spend the week in Tikal uncovering remains of the engineers, one of the biggest sites associated with Mayan civilization. Tikal is an archaeological site rich in architecture, art, and culture. It's interesting to see the distinct Mayan artistic style applied to the figure of engineer. On most of these pictographs, we see giant figures that are larger than humans, the same thing we witnessed in the original Alien and Prometheus. I think it's an interesting idea, and it's cool to see how Ridley put the theory of ancient astronauts on the screen. Let me know what you think in the comment section.
Hey guys, Croft is here. In Prometheus we see a hologram of the engineer starting the juggernaut using a flute, the same way David was able to turn on the navigation system. I thought it was slightly weird and unclear why the engineer would use such a simple and old instrument to start a highly advanced ship capable of space travel. So how juggernauts work? Turns out the science behind juggernauts is quite interesting and explains why the ship crashed on Paradise sometime after the bombing. It also explains why the mother juggernaut is missing and where did it go, since it's no longer present in this arena-like place. Remember, this is just a theory, and when I first read it, it seemed a little bit hard to believe, but when I looked at the evidence from Prometheus and Alien Covenant, it actually made sense. First of all, the most obvious explanation is that the ship's navigation system requires a flute sound to ensure that the pilot is in fact a living and intelligent being and not a robot. But because David was programmed with an ability to create, he's able to pass as a humanoid. Besides the simple explanation, there is much more to what the Juggernaut actually is and how it works. From outside, it is a large asymmetrical wishbone-shaped craft with thickened central section between two horns which bend upwards. The ship resembles an ancient symbol called the Ouroboros. It represents cyclicality, especially in the sense of something constantly recreating itself. The Juggernaut measured 170 meters in length and 116 meters wide. Here are some scenes from Prometheus that lead to a very interesting conclusion about the Juggernaut. When David is playing around with the controls, he presses on those little egg-like buttons and they produce sounds as if they were reacting to the touch. When the crew meets the engineer, if you pay attention to the suit, you'll notice that it's integrated with his body because of the way it merges with his neck. As we know, engineers are able to create life and they are highly skilled in manipulating biomaterials, so their suits are also bioengineered and may act as living parts of their bodies. That brings up a theory that the ship, or at least a part of it, is organic and a result of bioengineering. Probably Actually, many people originally assumed that the Juggernaut is a non-biotechnology because of the way we build our spaceships, cars, and other mechanisms. But since engineers are so advanced in biological engineering, they integrate living organisms into their spacecrafts. That's why the Juggernaut is a mix of biological and mechanical components, so we can pretty much say that the ship is alive. I know it may sound a little bit ridiculous, but hold on, because it actually answers many questions from Prometheus and what happened to Juggernaut and the Mother Juggernaut in Alien Covenant. That would explain why the interior of the Juggernaut resembles more a living organism than a space-going vessel with skeletal walls, circular gangways, and steep passages. When the engineer prepares to launch the ship, it seems like the seat envelops him and he becomes a part of it. When the crew enters the Juggernaut, the texture of walls starts to change, as if the ship detected an unknown organism and responded by changing the environment. The crew also notices that something inside the ship generates an atmosphere, so it's possible that the Juggernaut has a mechanism to produce oxygen for engineers, or the organic part of the ship needs oxygen itself. The engineer plays a flute to activate a part of the navigation system. The sound must be of the right frequency to communicate with the Juggernaut's biopart and thus activate the ship. This can be a producer's reference to the string theory that suggests that everything is made of vibrations, so by playing a certain frequency, the engineers are able to get access to interstellar travel. I also noticed that in the scene where the ship Prometheus crashes the Juggernaut, you can hear some weird low-frequency sounds, and it may be just the music, but it doesn't fit the rhythm, so if this theory is correct, these sounds may be produced by the Juggernaut itself as a response to being destroyed. Now let's talk about how the Juggernaut and the Mother Juggernaut crashed. Yes, we actually know from the movie that the Mother Juggernaut was also taken down. When Daniels and Loeb leave the Paradise Planet, for a few seconds we can actually see the crashed Mother Juggernaut in the background at the base of the mountain. So how did the ships crash? We know now that they have biological or living components, so when David released such a big amount of the black goo in the atmosphere, some of the pathogen might have penetrated the Juggernaut and affected the organic part of the ship. For the same reason, the Mother Juggernaut was taken down, since it was in direct contact with the black goo. Let me know what you guys think about the Juggernaut's technology, and if you also found it unusual that the interstellar spaceship had this kind of organic interior design. Hey guys, Croft is here. Many people, including me, really liked Elizabeth Shaw in Prometheus and were extremely disappointed with the fact that she died and didn't get any screen time in Alien Covenant besides the prologue. I wish we could learn more about her character in other Alien films, but in this video we'll go over the origins of Elizabeth Shaw, her upbringing and life on Earth prior to Prometheus. There is also an interesting theory on what was happening on Earth before the expedition, so that Shaw did not want to go back, as she told to David. Shaw was born in 2061 in a British family. After her mother died of unknown disease, she was raised by her father in South Africa. We also learn from David, who observed Shaw's dreams, that her father died of Ebola. Dr. Elizabeth Shaw was an accomplished archaeologist with doctorates in paleontology, archaeology, and human mythology. As a scientist, Shaw was very well prepared and had advanced knowledge in several research fields. She showed a high level of knowledge of ancient cultures and various methods to study them, as well as being skilled in sophisticated medical and forensic science procedures. Despite being a short, gentle, faithful, and calm-looking young woman, Shaw was a most humane and strong-willed individual with a high level of moral reasoning and a very devoted Christian. Her inability to bear any children left a mark in her personality, as she became very upset whenever she was reminded of that fact. Shaw's infertility may explain her fascination with creation and a desire to know why the engineers created humanity. It's also quite interesting that she literally gets on her knees when meeting her creator, unlike the other members of the crew, and maybe that's why she becomes the only human survivor. Elizabeth was also a very disciplined person who appeared to be in top physical condition for her gender and age. Several tragedies from her past, including the death of her parents, also gave her a strong personality as well as a high sense of self-preservation. Thus, she could become very hard-willed and brave, even resorting to physical violence if the situation required it. In 2089, during her expedition in the Isle of Skye in Scotland, Shaw, along with her boyfriend and a fellow archaeologist Charlie Holloway, discovered a star map similar to several other ancient culture artifacts. They interpreted this as an invitation from humanity's creators or engineers. Elizabeth shared her discovery with Peter Wayland, the elderly CEO of Wayland Corporation. She was actually calling Wayland's office for a month in order to be a part of the expedition. Wayland later funded the creation of the scientific vessel USCSS Prometheus to follow the map to the distant moon LV-223. Actually, the ship Prometheus was traveling over 15 times the speed of light, since it's written that the distance to LV-223 is about 35 light years, but the crew only spent 2 years in cryosleep. Elizabeth came along because she believed that the engineers created humanity and she desired to meet her maker. Of course, as we know, everything turned out pretty tragically. Although Shaw asks the captain to sacrifice the ship to save Earth, she clearly doesn't want to go back to her home planet, and there's actually a theory that would explain that. At the beginning of Prometheus, we only see remote mountains and fields, so we don't know what's happening in big cities. A new upcoming movie, The Blade Runner 2049, actually can give us some clues on what was happening on Earth before the Prometheus expedition. The original Blade Runner movie was directed by Ridley Scott, and there are lots of proofs that alien movies and specifically Prometheus are in the same universe with the Blade Runner. One proof would be that in the script for Prometheus, Wayland at one moment mentions his friend, saying that that's how he ran his corporation, like a god on the top of a pyramid overlooking a city of angels. Peter clearly talked about Eldon Tyrell, who appeared in the original Blade Runner movie. So in the trailer for the Blade Runner sequel 2049, we know that something terrible is happening on Earth which caused the society to be in chaos. By some shots from the trailer, we see that the environment is getting worse and pretty much everything starts to turn into a desert. By the title, it sets in 2049, which is about 45 years before the Prometheus expedition. So if the situation on Earth stayed the same during Shaw's lifetime, it would explain why she did not want to go back. The last interesting thing that I want to say is that Earth is never explicitly shown in the Alien movies apart from an alternate ending of the special edition of Alien Resurrection. Ripley and the surviving crew of the ship Betty were able to land near Paris, and they found out that the planet turned to a wasteland. So maybe everything on Earth was destroyed due to a nuclear war, virus, or simply radical climate changes. Although Alien Resurrection happens about 200 years after the events in Prometheus, we may assume that living conditions on Earth started to decline during Shaw's lifetime. Because the environment on Earth was in a very poor state and Shaw did not have any family back home, it's pretty obvious that she did not want to return.
Hello guys, Croft is here. I recently came across an interview of Quentin Tarantino speaking about Prometheus and giving his feedback about the movie. If you're a movie fan, you've probably heard about Tarantino and know that he's a very famous director and makes incredible movies like Pulp Fiction, Django Unchained, Kill Bill and others. I know that some people may not like Tarantino movies or Ridley Scott movies, however, they're both one of the top directors in the world, so it's really interesting to see Tarantino reviewing Prometheus and especially criticizing it. The interview with Tarantino was on a late night show, and I'll put a link to the video in the description if you want to see the entire interview. Tarantino wasn't too serious and tried to keep a comedic tone about what he was saying. He said that, and overall, he was excited to see a prequel for such an iconic movie as Alien of 1979. However, Tarantino thinks that, quoting, "there are a lot of dumb stuff in Prometheus." He brought up one example involving Hammerbeat, which he called the Space Cobra. I'm pretty sure Quentin had a lot more criticism about Prometheus, but he preferred to speak about this one particular example just out of the respect for Ridley Scott and limited time they had on the show. Quentin said that the movie had a lot of dumb stuff in it, and the incident with the Hammerbeat is one of them. He thinks that it was ridiculous that a biologist who's in charge of alien life forms reaches to touch a clearly hostile creature. All of us are familiar with that moment when Milburn sees this alien snake and behaves in the most unprofessional and unscientific way, trying to play with an alien life form that they don't know anything about. I think this is the most confusing moment in the film that really threw me off when I first saw it. Tarantino said that he loved Prometheus, but at the same time was disappointed because no scientist would behave in a way that Milburn did. As I mentioned in my other videos, the Prometheus script actually has an explanation about why Milburn was so unqualified. The explanation is quite short, so I don't know why they did not include it in the movie. In the script, one of the crew members talks to Vickers and mentions that these scientists don't look like real scientists. Vickers responds that this is the reason she hired them. If we consider that she hates her father, Peter Weyland, and thinks that the entire expedition is a waste of money, it totally makes sense that she hired unqualified people to set the expedition to failure. If producers could just add this small piece of dialogue, many details would make more sense, like Fifield's attitude and the fact that Charlie took off the helmet in the temple, basically risking to die for no reason. Hey guys, Croft is here. Before we begin, I just wanted to say thank you to those who watch my videos. I really appreciate that. We recently hit 9,000 subscribers and pretty soon we're gonna reach 10k, so thank you guys for that. In today's video, I want to talk about a question that many people wondered, which is who created engineers? Just like Elizabeth Shaw said, if engineers created us, who created them?
Because they made us.
And who made them?
Well, exactly.
This is a really interesting question, but alien movies did not give us a direct answer yet because it's too hard to come up with an explanation how life emerged into existence and what exactly is life. If we find out who created engineers, then the next question will arise, who created those who created engineers, and so on and so forth, like a never-ending cycle of creation. However, there exists two theories about how engineers could have been created. The second theory might appear extremely controversial, so I would suggest to look at some evidence before completely rejecting it. So let's start with the first theory that proposes that engineers evolved from the black goo or the pathogen. From Alien Covenant deleted scene, we learned that the black goo is an ancient form of AI that contains nanoparticles capable of evolutionary computing. This substance is also called the accelerant and possesses various properties, many of which we don't even know yet.
Organic.
Since the black goo has a biological element, in certain environments it could have produced simple organisms that eventually evolved into more complex ones, until humanoid beings such as engineers appeared. That's why engineers almost worshipped the pathogen and created a temple filled with pathogen ampules.
When David examined one of them, the black goo was moving, indicating that it is some kind of unknown organism or a group of cells. Based on alien movies so far, the black goo produced a new life form only in contact with an existing organism. We've never seen the black goo producing a life on its own. The reason might be because it takes lots of time for the pathogen to transform into an organism without any pre-existing cells, but when it goes in contact with a life form, it dramatically accelerates its growth because there are quote-unquote more cells to work with, and thus the name the accelerant. Another reason we've never seen the black goo producing life on its own is because engineers always kept it in isolation from outside world. Glass ampules with the black goo were placed in solid urns. The black goo might be a nanosubstance that is capable of arranging molecules into living cells and organisms, accelerating their growth exponentially. With that being said, engineers originated from the black goo and then worshipped this substance as the source of their existence. They started conducting experiments to create their own new life forms using the pathogen, and as a result, they ended up with at least 3 different races: humans, xenomorphs, and people from the planet 4. However, their attempts to play God led to their destruction, and one or maybe all of the engineer planets were contaminated. The second theory is actually pretty crazy, but it can make sense because there are quite a bit of details that can prove it. Remember, this is just a theory, and although it makes sense in a certain way, I'm pretty skeptical about it. The main idea is that xenomorphs created engineers as opposed to what most people thought. This theory contradicts to the common assumption that every civilization or species are created by another, more advanced civilization. It doesn't always have to be the case, because in certain circumstances, civilizations can degrade instead of always progressing. With that being said, according to this theory, engineers did not create humans, and the planet that we see at the beginning of Prometheus is the planet 4, or just another planet that engineers wanted to seed with xenomorphs, their creators. This theory would explain the xenomorph mural in Prometheus. Engineers clearly worshipped this xenomorph-looking organism because it created them. Xenomorph was portrayed in a crucifix form, which is a way producers implied its divine status, and there is really no other explanation for the mural other than someone that engineers worshipped. David created some version of a xenomorph in Alien Covenant because he used pre-existing alien DNA contained in the black goo. Even in the novelization, David says that xenomorph eggs were already there before his arrival. So how and why xenomorphs would create engineers? In the past, xenomorph civilization went extinct because of their abuse of technologies, and their last attempt to survive was to create an artificial intelligence in the form of engineers to spread their DNA across the galaxy and prevent their species from dying. Sounds a lot like what humans are trying to do using androids. Similar analogy applies to Walter, who operates the ship that contains thousands of human embryos that they're planning to raise on a new colonized planet. Xenomorphs were ancient extraterrestrial species that eventually merged their bodies with technologies, resulting in biomechanical design that we see in alien movies. On the top of that, through rapid growth of technologies, xenomorphs replaced natural reproduction with artificial methods, and eventually they completely lost their ability to reproduce without machines. Xenomorphs became extremely dependent on technologies, and their civilization started to decay, so the threat of complete extinction became very real. For this reason, xenomorphs created an artificial life form, engineers, to help them survive and maintain favorable environment for their reproduction. Engineers were way smarter than xenomorphs, just like androids exceed humans in almost everything. Engineers invented alien eggs and facehuggers as a new way for their creators to reproduce. They also modified xenomorph DNA so that it would take only one specimen, alien queen, to produce dozens of eggs that would span new xenomorphs. For certain reasons, xenomorph civilization was decaying rapidly, and engineers created the black goo, the masterpiece of the biotechnological progress. The pathogen contained xenomorph DNA that could be merged instantly with any host, and its purpose was to spread xenomorphs across the space. Engineers had to preserve alien DNA in secure ampules and urns and travel across the space to find life forms which would allow xenomorph civilization to rise again. That's why the space jockey was transporting hundreds of alien eggs in the original Alien movie. He was created to preserve xenomorphs and stop them from going extinct. The black goo had the same purpose. That's why engineers were planning to contaminate Earth with the pathogen to revive the civilization of their creators. Obviously, something went wrong. The juggernaut filled with alien eggs crashed on LV-426, while xenomorph temples on LV-223 were abandoned. The reason might be that engineers simply started to malfunction, since they're basically extremely advanced androids, and like every technology, they can break and stop working at some point. If this theory is true, then one question arises: why xenomorphs don't show signs of extreme intelligence if they were a highly advanced civilization? There might be many reasons for that. For example, with the absence of society that could teach newborns everything they need to know, every new xenomorph wouldn't be that intelligent because there was no one he could learn from. The same analogy applies to humans. There are numerous cases of people who were lost at a very young age and raised in the wild, completely isolated from society, and their level of intellect was only slightly above the one of animals that they grew up with. Another reason might be that because xenomorphs were so dependent on technology, they simply stopped using their brain and became less intelligent. A trivial analogy would be, if you can always use a calculator, eventually your ability to perform calculations in your brain will decrease. If you take this idea to the extreme, then many brain functions can degrade over generations as a result of dependence on technology. Abuse of technologies is one of the main themes of alien movies, so it would make perfect sense if this is what happened to xenomorphs. In fact, the same thing might have destroyed engineers, since they went from wearing robes to biosuits merged with their bodies. And LV-223 might have been destroyed as a result of losing control over technology or a bioexperiment that they were conducting. Alien movies itself are suggesting that although technological progress can offer many benefits, its abuse and extreme dependence can lead to the extinction of human race. Alien movies can be also viewed as a warning to humans that if we don't use technology in a more responsible way, we will become biohybrid monsters that we're so afraid of. Technology turning against humans is also an important theme in alien movies. David and Ash value exploration of alien life forms over human crew, and it is shown multiple times that technology fails to protect humans. That's a pretty controversial theory, but it makes sense given the mural and the main themes of these movies. Let me know in the comments which one of these two theories you prefer, and also leave your suggestions down below. Check out this t-shirt that I designed, I'll leave a link in the description. It would really support my channel if you get one. Thank you guys for watching, hit a like if you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to subscribe for more content. My name is Croft and I'll see you in the next video.